Okay.
Okay, everyone. So, welcome back. Our second speaker for the Europe region is Anastasia Metallinou, who will showcase Greece. Anastasia is an English language teacher, dyslexia specialist, and materials writer. She is a co-author of English Sounds Fun, which is a holistic, structured, and self-contained method accessible to all learners, including those with dyslexia. Anastasia is also a teacher trainer and TESOL Greece SPLD coordinator. We're so very happy to have you here. So
I'm so
over to you,
excited.
Anastasia.
Thank you so much. Very honored and happy to be here as well. So we get just started. Okay.
Yes.
So my talk today has to do with teaching English to learners with dyslexia, and we're going to mention some other specific learning differences as well. The kind of challenges students and teachers experience, and I'm going to suggest some ways of supporting them and teaching them. Before getting into this, I would like to say that a student may be assessed with dyslexia, but he or she may have characteristics of some other SPLDs like ADHD and dyspraxia. So teachers really need to be aware of all specific learning differences and their characteristics. Very quickly, students with dyslexia, as you all may be aware of, struggle with reading and writing. More specifically, isolating the sounds, matching sounds to letters, blending sounds into words and word recognitions. So the alphabet has got 26 letters, but there are about 44 sounds according to the area, the country, and so on. So students really get lost with uh, sound recognition and all that. And of course, it affects reading and writing. Now, students with ADD or ADHD are the ones who cannot sit still for a short period of time, who are easily distracted, who will try to answer before listening to the whole question, who interrupt others, who have difficulties waiting for their turn. Students with dyspraxia have difficulty with speech, movement, and coordination. They are the clumsy ones that falling over, smacking into doors and walls easily. They have issues with organization and, of course, um, difficulties with learning. Now, SPLDs like dyslexia, ADHD, and dyspraxia share some common difficulties. So these students, these learners share some common difficulties like organization, memory, concentration, time, direction, perception, sequencing. For example, I'm dyslexic, and a couple of weeks ago, I joined a yoga class, and the instructor gave a few instructions in a sequence, like 4, 5 in the row. I got completely lost. After the second one, I completely lost him. So it's good to give one instruction at a time and make sure they understand it. And all these difficulties may lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, frustration, behavior problems. They may want to give up learning or English, and they tend to have low academic achievement. Now, in Greece, students learn English at state schools, which is compulsory from year 1 till they finish school. Language schools and private tuition lessons are very popular. Most of the students go to afternoon lessons here in Greece. Now, many teachers often lack awareness and training, appropriate resources. I'm going to show you a couple of examples in the next slide. Confidence, because they don't have the right knowledge and the right tools to teach such learners. And many teachers very often say, okay, I haven't studied special education, so I'm not going to teach these learners because I don't know how to. The fact is that the percentage in class is so high that whether we are aware of it or not, such learners are in almost every classroom. So teachers, English language teachers, need to deal with it as well. The good news is that in Greece, more and more English language teachers are trying to get informed about the SPLDs. They attend seminars and conferences, online courses. They're doing the best to support the learners or creating an inclusive classroom environment. So the number is growing rapidly year by year, which is very positive. If we try to see whether a course book is dyslexic friendly, and we think about its layout, about the material of new material, about the amount of the new material which is introduced in every lesson, and the types of activities. Here are a few examples from state school books. So, for example, in this one, we're getting completely disoriented. There's so much. The page is so busy. There is a leading exercise with far too, like it says, look at the people in the picture. What do they have in common? Read the facts about each star. Discuss as a class if they're right or wrong. Check the facts on the internet. So the far too many instructions and the way they're written doesn't help at all. Size is small. Font is not friendly. After this exercise, it's not very clear where we're going to. Which is the next exercise? Is it grammar or is it task 1 and 2? And what's the exercise below task 2? So the whole thing is not really friendly for such learners. Here's from another book. Again, the instructions, there are far too many instructions, one after the other. Students get completely lost here. And in the space where they have to write, like good habits and bad habits, there's the distractor in the background. And again, the struggle with things like this. Or here, the visuals are not really helpful. In the first one, it says the bank is next to the cinema, but which is the bank and which is the cinema? This is not very clear at all. The same happens to the other visuals. Later on in the exercise, in resident A, for example, find these buildings on your map and fill in the empty boxes. But in the map, you cannot really tell what it's written. So students are getting pretty lost in the box. And if the teachers don't have the appropriate knowledge as well, so, it's quite hard to teach in classrooms. Now, I felt it's quite important to listen to students' voices. How do they feel about the situation? How do they feel about learning English? How do they feel about the course books they have to do in class? So I interviewed about 12 students from different backgrounds. They're aged between 8 and 16 years old. They have various backgrounds in learning English. Apart from state school, they have tried various language schools or private tuition lessons. And what was really interesting is that they more or less they said the same things to me. So basically, from the students' perspective, they all aspire to be good learners. The problem is that they can't read or write. They really struggle with this, and they feel bored, annoyed, and uncomfortable. They keep experiencing failure for a long time, for years, and they consider themselves to be low ability learners, and this makes them feel embarrassed. They keep comparing themselves to their peers. And they feel in a more vulnerable position. And here's some quotes I got from these learners that I interviewed. For example, I forget to do homework, sometimes on purpose. I can't understand a thing. I have to memorize things that don't make any sense. I see letters in my book, but they don't make any sense because this poor lad cannot read. Exercises are huge, exhausting, and terribly boring. I always have to ask for help, and they ask parents, and very often parents just write the answers for them, or they ask their friends or the siblings, and they just copy the exercises in the books, but they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. It's like someone forcing you to learn Chinese. You don't want to do it, but you're made to do it. What are some of the big... Now, since I present the student's perspective, I felt that I really have to present the teacher's perspective. So on the social media, I had a general question in the Greek social media. What are some of the biggest challenges when teaching learners with SPLDs like dyslexia, ADHD, and dysgraphia? I got about 55 replies, and here I present you the answers that most of them shared. So creating an exciting, fun learning environment to motivate all students, making learning a positive and rewarding experience, getting the directors of learning and parents to accept, invest, and make changes. Here's how they feel. They feel inadequate, helpless in terms of support and resources, worried, not experienced enough. They don't know much about SPLDs. They struggle with material preparation, mainly because they don't have the knowledge and the time. Behavior management, helping students in a busy mixed ability class, boosting confidence, developing memory strategies, and reading comprehension. What was really interesting is that nobody mentioned what students said, that the main problem was that they couldn't read or write. So teachers must realize that they need to teach the learners how to read, spell, and write with fluency. Unless they achieve this, it's pointless moving on, trying to support them in all these other things that they suggested. Now, I'm going to suggest various ways of supporting learners with dyslexia and other specific learning differences, how we can teach them effectively, but I'm going to take a holistic approach. Obviously, in this session, there is not enough time to go through in detail, but I'm going to give you a general view of what you can do. So the first thing is teachers need to be aware of the difficulties and the challenges their learners experience. They need to understand what they're going through. So they need to be aware of the characteristics of dyslexia and the other specific learning differences, and the social and emotional consequences of SPLDs, which sometimes are more severe than the learning difficulties themselves. Also, they need to be able to recognize such learners in the classroom, because very often a lot of learners are assessed, but there are others that are not assessed yet. So teachers need to be aware to identify them and try to support and help them. This way, teachers with students build empathy, which is crucial in learning a language. Teachers need to explain in a simple way to their students what dyslexia is. So students shouldn't feel bad about the difficulties and what they're going through. So they need to know the nature of the difficulties they experience. The dyslexia is very common, so you can give them examples of some very famous people that have dyslexia, some people who struggled, but with perseverance and support, the right support and the right instruction, they made it and they became very successful in their lives. So provide some good and positive examples so that you boost their self-esteem and they start believing in themselves and their abilities. And of course, that dyslexia is not an obstacle in their life. That's really, really important. This way, students feel empowered and they start building their self-image and confidence, which is crucial when learning a language. For example, I had a student last year who came to my class, and she had been learning English for about 4 years, when after 4 years, he could hardly recognize any letters. He couldn't reply to basic questions like what's your name and where do you come from and things like this. But he had been in class in EFL classes for about 4 years. He was assessed with mild dyslexia. He had experienced failure for a very, very long time, and he kept comparing his progress to his peers, saying, "Oh, I have been learning English for 4 years. My peers are ready to start taking examinations, and I cannot answer to simple questions. So why bother? I mean, why should we waste our time on this? We have better things to do. Why don't you tell my mom not to start learning English?" So self-esteem and self-image are crucial when learning a language. So students need to know what they're going through and they need to start believing in themselves. Then they need to learn how to read and write. They need to learn the sounds letters make, and they need to be able to do segmenting and blending. So if we have the cat, the word cat, they need to be able to listen to the sounds k, at, and be able to write these as well. And the opposite, like from cat, they need to they need to be able to say k, at, and they need to learn this through multisensory activities. And through the right instruction, it needs to become automatic. And of course, we need to teach them memory strategies. They need to develop memory strategies and organization, and they need to become autonomous in studying and learning. And they need to be able to focus more, and they need help with the need to develop sequencing and processing. And of course, they need to work on receptive and productive skills. And so crucial, so important, they need to learn how to learn and learn to think and self-awareness. So basically, we need to see education holistically, and this would benefit all learners, not just learners with specific learning differences. So how can we do that? First of all, teach through multisensory and multisensory highly structured teaching method, not just taking bits here and there that don't make any sense. Some of the key principles of a special teaching method are the following. I'll just go through this quite quickly. It needs to be highly structured. There needs to be a logic from everything that is taught. There needs to it needs to have small realistic steps for the learners and teach one thing at a time. And students need to keep recapping on what it's already learned. And it needs to have some explicit guidance for teachers so that they know what they're doing. And skills which are learned need to be practiced, learned, and preserved in the long-term memory, because as I mentioned earlier, students with dyslexia struggle with memory, and overlearning to achieve automaticity is crucial as well. Both teachers and students and teachers need to play an active role and the lesson needs to be as interactive as possible. Using hands-on materials, using audiovisual materials, using coursebooks, using games, using songs. So it needs to be as visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile as possible. So teaching is not only about providing information, but about accessing useful and transferable skills. For example, phonological awareness skills can be later transferred and utilized in writing skills. The same with organizational skills and so on. And these skills are very useful later in their lives as well. They can be adapted in their lives as well. Metacognition is very important as well, bridging and transferring knowledge, understanding, and skills, thinking about thinking, self-questioning of how a particular response was arrived at, learning how to learn. So these things are some of the key principles, especially teaching method needs to have. Now, dyslexia is not just about difficulties. We're talking about some very smart children, some very smart people that have, and we need to take advantage of their strengths. And trust me, they can thrive in many areas. So you need to find this. You need to find out for every student what are the strengths, what are they good at. So in many cases, students are highly creative. They can be artistically gifted. They can see the big picture, think holistically. So the name is the trees, but see the forest. They can think outside the box. They can be good at problem solving. They can be great team players. They can be highly skilled at spotting patterns and making connections. But what's really important is to know that strengths can vary significantly from person to person. It's very important to provide a positive and motivating learning experience. So as I said earlier, you need to believe in your students and their abilities. And in order to do that, you need to have all the knowledge behind it. Make sure they experience success in every lesson. This will really boost their self-esteem. They start believing in themselves. They shouldn't be afraid to making mistakes in your classroom. Give it a go. Try again. Be positive. Be encouraging. It's very important to compare the progress to their own previous progress, and this is closely linked to the highly structured method I mentioned earlier, instead of comparing themselves to their peers. The power of yet, like I'm not good at it yet, I can't do this yet, it doesn't make sense yet. So this is another way of encouraging them that, okay, with some perseverance and with some more, with some more practice, you'll get there. And of course, praise for effort, good behavior, success. Another very important thing is to work closely with parents. And I know that many parents have kind of denial for the children's difficulties, but with those that you can work with, take advantage of it. Try to find more about your learner and work closely with them. It makes a huge difference in their learning. So I'm running out of time here, so trying to sum up. Students with dyslexia and other SPLDs are in every classroom. Therefore, teachers need to be aware of the characteristics of SPLDs, the challenges their students experience, and they need to be trained in teaching learners with SPLDs so that they can create an inclusive environment in the classroom and help the learners achieve their full potential. And as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, all these things, from all these things, all learners benefit, not just learners with specific learning differences. CPD is crucial. There's a SIG in IATEFL called Inclusive Practices and SEN, and the board is doing a magnificent job. In March, we set up a new SIG in TESOL Greece called SPLDs, and we are really excited to say that on the 24th and on the 25th of November, we are running a colloquium in this field, and we have some amazing speakers. So you can find out more from TESOL Greece's website about it, and we would love to see you in Greece, in Athens, for the colloquium. And of course, there are massive online courses that teachers can attend for free, like dyslexia and Future Learn. That it's done in association with University of Lancaster. About 35 teachers attend it every year worldwide. It's amazing. So organizations are doing a great job in raising awareness and supporting teachers, which is fantastic. So that's it from me. That's it from Greece. Thank you so much. And I would like to say a huge thank you again to IATEFL and the Young Learners SIG for organizing this amazing web conference. So there is time for a few questions. Let me see.
Yes, do you have any questions?
Some parents don't accept that children have dyslexia, how to work with them. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear me?
can.
Okay. John, have I got a couple of minutes to answer some questions? Hello?
Yes, yes, you have about 5 minutes to answer
Can
the
you hear
question.
me?
Yes,
Okay,
you
so
have about five.
regarding parents, many parents have got this kind of denial because, well, dyslexia runs in families, and usually these people have struggled at school and throughout their lives, and they don't want to accept that their child is going through the same difficulties. So I guess that somehow we need to raise awareness amongst parents as well. But you as teachers, the more you know, the more you can help and support and try to talk to them so they understand what's going on and maybe persuade them to have the kids assessed. Any other questions? How do you let the other students understand that the dyslexic students have different learning speed and stop comparing each other? Okay, first of all, I'm trying to create a very positive environment within the classroom. Students need to accept each other. They need to understand that everyone is learning at their own pace and their own time, and we give them space and time for all that. Um, Stop comparing each other. Again, there's so many different ways of comparing their own progress to their own previous progress. Um, um, Self-reflection and self-assessment is crucial here as well. Progress charts are crucial as well, so we can track the progress and they can compare their own progress. And the way we talk to the students, to all students, is crucial. It's up to us to make them see things and understand things, and create an inclusive environment. Um, how many contact hours do you think is enough so as to make a difference? Because the way I see it, it's a never-ending work. Well, to me, the the crucial thing is teach them how to um, read and write. At the same time, work on all the other areas that they struggle with. So, in order to be able to do all this, teachers need to be trained. They need to have the appropriate materials in their hands to do it. Otherwise, every now and then I get teachers asking me, "Oh, can you give me a few tips? How can I teach learners with dyslexia?" Well, it's not that simple. You need to know things in order to be able to apply them in class. Um, when you get the knowledge, when you have the appropriate materials, it's very realistic and it can be done in a short period of time. Now, this depends on the number of students you have, the type of class you have. I mean, there's so many different things one needs to take into consideration. So it's not easy to give numbers. What about slightly dyslexic students? Can then be mistakenly considered lazy, not trying enough? Well, it depends on the person. It depends on the student. It's very often, very often, teachers and parents blame students to be lazy, but it has to do with the difficulties they experience. So we need to be very careful with
Thank you
this.
so much, Anastasia. This is such an important topic, and I think you've taught us many things. But one thing I know I've learned is that I think there's so much more that I need to learn. And I think so much more that we all need to learn about students with dyslexia and serving all of our learners, and making sure that all of our learners.
Exactly. We shouldn't be racist. We shouldn't be racist. We need to do the best for all our learners.
Absolutely.
So we're looking forward to seeing you in Athens in a few weeks then.
That's right. You gave us good resources to seek out more answers to our questions. And
Amazing speakers,
it's,
really interesting topics.
yes,
Why don't you join us?
I would
And
love,
in TESOL Greece in November,
yes,
and IATEFL in Liverpool
yes.
in April.
Yes, I will be there in Liverpool. And so if you're there, I will see
Brilliant.
you. And some people are asking for
Fantastic.
your email, if you feel
So I
comfortable.
can write, I'm going to write it as a message in a
Great.
minute
Wonderful. Thank you so
in the
much.
discussion, in the chat
Okay,
box.
everyone, a virtual applause for Anastasia. Thank you very
Kisses from
much.
Greece.
Kisses.
Lovely to see you again,
Good
you
to
too.